5 Live Formula One.
Welcome to Montreal in Canada. It's a pretty dank and rainy afternoon. It's Rosanna Tennant with you, joined by former Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer and Chris Medland, who knows all things F1, so he is well placed to preview the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend. We are sitting sheltered from the rain because it has been a pretty gloomy day all round. We've had 2 European races and now we find ourselves in Canada. Are you guys feeling okay? It's a little bit odd, that, isn't it? A bit disorienting.
So it's a 6-hour flight for a 5-hour time difference. I only remembered this when I arrived last night. That's quite a ratio, isn't it? 6.5 hours.
You get a lot of bang for your buck with
I'm thinking
flight.
you were on some quick plane, because I think most people said it's about 8 to get here. So...
They've brought Concorde back for Jolyon Palmer.
I woke up and we were just there. It was amazing.
This time zone difference has really played with your head.
So please, let's put your bed back up in the plane.
They just put the thrusters down.
Sleep lying down on a plane. Excellent. It is a weird little quirk of the calendar, isn't it? We've had a little soupçon, a little amuse-bouche with Imola and Monaco in Europe. Now we come to Montreal. I'm going all local.
Yeah.
Do you like my
French,
Montreal?
And soupçon and the mousse-bouche.
I went big at the
Flight
beginning. Here we are.
Officially 7 hours 10, but I believe we had a favourable wind. 6 hours 30.
I mean, that's unlikely as well, going that direction.
It's done me as well, Chris.
Wow. Wow.
Well, just to regroup, here we are in the paddock. Here we are in the paddock. And this is a bit of a fan favourite, a driver favourite. It's a bit of a street track, a karting track Lewis Hamilton was talking about earlier on, a temporary track. It's a bit of everything. And the walls are tight, so we're going to see some action this weekend. Are we excited for what's to come?
Yeah, I love this race, actually. I mean, the atmosphere in the city is always really good downtown. I actually flew here from the US. It was packed with F1 fans to fly over. And yeah, they always say that it's great, but also it's the fact that we're on an island that means you kind of can't escape it once you get here, in a good way. But the track is so close to everywhere you walk around on this island because of the way it's kind of pinned in the middle of the river. So it's very unique and very, very cool, and does quite often produce some great racing, which the rain might even add to this weekend.
Oh yeah, I like a bit of that, a little bit of changeable conditions. I know you like to keep an eye on the weather forecast, Jolyon Palmer.
Look, there is actually going to be a lot of rain this weekend, and that's going to be fun. I'm here for the rain. It's a really cool track, nice city as well. We're only 15 minutes out of downtown, and we've seen a bit of rain here in the past. There's a propensity for it, and I think with the way that it's shaking out already today, and the forecast looks like it's going to be more changeable into the weekend, it should be pretty fun because it's a street circuit feel. You've got the barriers close. There's not a lot of room for error. You've got to bounce over the curbs. I think we're teed up for a good one.
Oh, nice. Well, we've whetted your appetite there. We'll preview the weekend properly later on in the pod. But first, as we've come into this weekend, there's a lot of chat off track. Let's talk about Sergio Perez. He has signed a contract extension of 2 years with Red Bull Racing. Did you guys see that coming? Because, look, his performances haven't been stellar. A lot of people thinking he didn't deserve to stay at the team. What did you make of the deal being announced, Chris?
So it did sound like it had been coming for a few weeks, and I actually spoke to Checo earlier today, and he said it was just before Imola he actually signed it, and he said, when we got to Europe, coming back from Miami. So that shows why he was confident, and maybe why those rumours then, or the word starts to get around that it's done. But also, I think then his 2 poor races have come after that decision was made, or his worst races of the season have come after that was already confirmed.
He must have been relieved.
Yes, big time. I think the fact it was a 2-year deal and it's announced as a 2-year deal, I mean, it could well be a 1+1 and it's just the way they've sold it, but it would be in some way surprising that it's a straight 2 because of the options Red Bull like to look at. Flip side, with new regulations, you might want continuity through to 2026. So there's pros and cons to both sides. I think it just always seemed like they were going to go for the status quo because, let's be honest, that's what's worked to get the best out of that team and Max Verstappen over the last few years. Why would you change a winning formula in that way? And as much as we love to see 2 drivers going at it like head-to-head in the same car, especially when there's a dominant car, if it's working for the team, they're not going to change it.
But I'm sort of grimacing at you as you're saying that because he's currently 5th in the driver's standing, Sergio Perez, Jolyon. He's not doing what they've asked of him. They want a 1-2. They got it last year from him. Just really. Is he the best bet, really? As convergence is starting to happen with these F1 rules that we have at the moment, is he going to be the one to fight with Max next year to get that championship done again?
Well, I think there's a worry for Red Bull that the gap's too big between them. And there's no doubt that they've got a nice, compliant team with teammates that know their role. I think Checo is signed for Max. That's probably fairly clear. Max is very happy with him as a teammate. And there's not really any risk of Checo taking any points off Max. So I think that's why the deal's been done. But you got to question, when Ferrari and McLaren are now winning races, then they're right there. If you look at the last 2-3 races, then Max is fighting it single-handedly against Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc. You've got usually Verstappen, both McLarens, both Ferraris, and then Perez. If that continues, it's not going to be enough for Red Bull. So I think it makes it a fascinating constructors dynamic, and they're going to need Perez to knuckle down once again. And the last 2 seasons have shown that he starts the year well and tends to fade away. They need to make sure that doesn't happen again.
It's an interesting one, because that's very much a driver's choice then. You're saying that he's signed for Max Verstappen. I asked Max whether Red Bull had signed Checo to entice him to stay earlier on, and he said no. But of course, the big thing is the Constructors' Championship for a team. So they need to focus on that. Okay, it's great. Max is going to be happy because he's got a driver that's not taking points off him. But have they gone for the right direction there?
I think it's tough when we say the big thing for a team is the Constructors' Championship, because you're right in many ways, and for a lot of the people that work within the team, it absolutely is, because things like bonuses are linked to where that team finishes in the championship. But when it comes to really what people talk about, the overall prestige and the marketing value you get out of F1, is if your drivers won the Drivers' Championship. Now, no one really talks about 2021 Mercedes were Constructors' Champions, do they? They talk about who won the Drivers' Championship.
I don't know about you, Chris. I love chatting about that.
Well, so based on that, I think they prioritise keeping Max, or trying to make sure Max is happy and is going to stay, especially with everything that's been going on over the last 12 months of that team, and a risk that 2026 might trigger him wanting to go elsewhere. If they've really tried to keep that environment as kind of perfect as it has been for him recently, then that involves keeping Checo, like Jolyon says, and I think that might be prioritised potentially over what would the Constructors' Championship outcome be.
They've shown it in the past that they are Drivers' Championship through and through. 21 was a big example. They are different to some of the other constructors in that way. They're all about Max Verstappen being the world champion. But then you do wonder if sometimes you need the second driver to be a little bit closer as well when it is going to be close. Maybe it'll be this year. Probably it'll be next year at this rate. Is Checo going to be close enough to help, as he did a couple of times in 21? That's a question mark. Flip side on that, though, if you get 2 drivers that are very closely matched, which is great, like for us, and has been very impressive from Ferrari and McLaren recently, but if one's then beating the other, when they need to be getting maximum points to beat Max Verstappen, actually taking those points off each other every now and then, just a little bit, can become damaging. So you never get that with Red Bull in that sense, really. But they can take points off the rival. So at the moment, if Max wins, there's a Ferrari or a McLaren second. And it was the same in 21. But if Max can win, and let's say Carlos Sainz was signed and could be second on a good day, you're taking points away from the rival. So you want to find the holy grail is to find a number 1 that is just ahead consistently of the number 2. And I mean, Ferrari are not far from it, but probably Sainz has been a little more competitive with Leclerc than would be absolutely optimal, but they're very close. But you do still have the pecking order that's established. And I think it is Sainz that would be the only other option, in my opinion, for Red Bull. I don't think there's another driver on the market that would be a better option than keeping Perez. But with Verstappen having his future questioned as well, and we don't know if he's going to be there for even next year, but certainly 26, signing Perez for those 2 years, if Verstappen walks, they're left a bit in the lurch. And that's the risk of not taking Sainz, who is a race winner in a Ferrari. He's beating Perez this year. He didn't in a Ferrari. He didn't even do the race in Jeddah. So they've given up what is surely a better option for the sake of team harmony. They need to just keep Max happy and keep Max at Red Bull.
And that is exactly what Max then went on to tell me earlier on. He talked about stability and calmness and working well together with Checo Perez. Well, whatever you two might think, it's been like watching a game of tennis go between each of you with your comebacks to the other. Whatever happens, Checo Perez has signed a 2-year, whether that's a 1+1 contract extension with Red Bull. Let's hear what he's been saying about it all, because there were some other options. He'd been talking to a few other teams.
You're always talking to different teams. There were other options out there, but for me, my plan A, B, and C was definitely to stay at Red Bull. I really want to finish my career here. Wherever that is, it's a team that has given me so much into my career that I'm just really happy, and I just want to give my best to this team till my last lap.
The deal takes you through to the new technical regulations in 2026. Just give us your thoughts on how you view the competitiveness of Red Bull over the next 2 years or so?
Well, I think, like you see, there are some great teams making a lot of progress, and we got to do the same. I think it's always great to be part of a set of regulations with a team. You know, when you're changing regulations and you're part of that team, you're already working on that, giving some ideas here and there, and it's something really quite nice to be able to be part of that.
So that was Checo Perez ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix, now knowing that his future is secure with Red Bull Racing. Another driver making headlines after Monaco, after the Grand Prix, during the Grand Prix, was Esteban Ocon, of course, coming together with his teammate Pierre Gasly. We heard his team boss, Bruno Fama, on the radio saying that there would be consequences. They might not be linked, but some of those consequences may or may not be that he is now not going to be racing with the team in 2025. He's going to leave Alpine after 5 years with them. Big news. Were you expecting it as well, Chris? I guess the writing may have been on the wall for some time. It's been a long tenure he's had with Alpine, and quite rare in Formula One to last that long with a team.
Yeah, it is actually. It's sometimes overlooked, actually, how long he's been there. And he's done a pretty good job against some high-quality teammates in that team as well, on the whole. But, yeah, I think the trend was that he was heading elsewhere, that kind of he'd been looking elsewhere himself, and that maybe Alpine were thinking, well, who else could be on the market? Obviously, that's not been a strong seat this year as well to go trying to chase drivers with. But I think the timing was a bit of a surprise, mainly because it didn't come coupled with, here's where Ocon's going next. It was just Esteban's out off the back of what happened in Monaco. Now, clearly, that wasn't a direct consequence. Like, that doesn't happen that quickly, that team goes, you know what, we're not going to keep you next year, and we're going to tell you that right now. But you wonder if the announcement and making it public and kind of shifting the narrative now onto him and what he does next was as a consequence of what happened.
Well, let's hear from Esteban Ocon. I asked him earlier on what happened after Monaco, and he's given us a bit of information about where he may or may not be next year.
Yeah, but I mean, we talked with Bruno, that's for sure. You know, inside closed door, it was very important to express a lot of different things, but you know, we've been talking with the team for a very long time, you know, on the future, and I was talking with various other teams as well, and we decided, you know, not to continue all together. That it was the right moment, you know, to have different challenges, you know, for me. And 5 years in Formula One, you know, I've stayed with this team, which is a very long time in Formula One world. We've achieved a lot. But as I said, you know, I'm looking forward to the challenges that lies ahead.
Some people might think it's a relief for you to be leaving Alpine after the inner turmoil at the team. Do you see it that way?
I think, as I said, it came at the good moment. You know that I will be, you know, driving somewhere else for next year, and yeah, I'm proud of what I have achieved with this team, and I look forward to be finishing this year on a positive note, 16 more races, and I hope that you know, we can finish this relationship on a high.
So you are driving next year. When are you going to tell us where that is? Haha, got you. How far advanced are you? When's this announcement coming, Esteban?
No, I mean, I will announce when the time is right. You know, in due course, like I said in my statement, I've said everything that I had to say there. There's nothing new, so we'll see.
So he teased me with the fact that he has got a seat in 2025, not yet announced. He's managed by Mercedes, so Toto Wolff involved with all of this. Where do we think he might wash up? Could it be Mercedes for a year? Could he be a little hot seat number for a year before the new regs in 2026? We've spoken about Carlos Sainz being on the market. People saying he wouldn't want just a year at Mercedes. He'd want something more long-term, perhaps the Sauber seat. Where does Esteban Ocon go? Where does he fit into all of this?
I don't see him going to Mercedes, and I know this is one where it won't be tennis with Jolyon, because I don't think he sees that happening either. Because the way the team are preparing Kimi Antonelli as well, and the fact that if you're going to put someone in at a time when they know they're not going to be winning a Drivers' Championship in 2025, it's actually a good year to get experience within that team before 26 could totally change everything. So I think it makes more sense if they are going to promote Antonelli early to do it in that way. I just don't see Ocon fitting, or it really creating a harmonious situation. Again, I mean, that's something we'll talk about a lot with Ocon, but for 1 year, like, why go that route when you're Mercedes? You can plan more long term than that. And I think he's probably been attracting the likes of Audi because they're looking for an experienced driver. He may have been trying to chase a Williams seat, but I'm not too sure that that's really going to be a big option for him. So then the other one's Haas, which has been actually much more attractive to drivers as this season's gone on. So I kind of think maybe Audi and Haas are the main two for him.
he's sort of blown his chances, I think, of a top seat, because he's not quick enough to be a world champion contender, I don't think, Ocon. He came in with a bit of hype. He beat Max Verstappen in Formula 3. But I think he's shown that he's a very capable Formula 1 driver. He's a race winner. But he's not at the level of Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, Russell. And so if you want to get in a top seat, then you have to be a very compliant second driver, which is your Carlos Sainz. Piastri will probably go on to be a top driver, but Sergio Perez then, who's happy to be subservient in the team. And that is one thing that Ocon is not happy to be. And we saw that in Monaco. We've seen that quite a few times in his career. So he's a difficult choice for a top team. Haas or Sauber are the two options. And I think he'd be a solid choice for either.
And when it comes to how he behaves in a team, obviously he has rubbed some teammates up the wrong way in the past. If he were to go to Sauber, of course we know Nico Hülkenberg is signed up for Sauber and then Audi. Would that be a good link up, do we think?
I'd quite like to see that. I think that's one where actually that would be quite a strong lineup. I think they would push each other pretty well, because also Hülkenberg is coming into a period now where he's really proved himself again going in at Haas and earned this seat at the Audi project that Sauber will become. But maybe there was a criticism of him before he left F1 as such the first time around, that he was cruising a little bit, maybe wasn't producing his A game every week. Someone like Ocon would certainly mean he couldn't do that, because he's probably going to make sure that his car's in front of yours at the end of the first lap if you're not on it. So I think in that sense it would be good, but yeah, you'd have to manage it. I think the project there at Sauber would also look, though, at experience. You've got a race winner, technically, in Ocon. He does have a win under his belt, a couple of podiums. But between the two of them, that's quite a lot of experience from fairly big teams at times that they can lean on as they try and develop that team. And
if you're Audi coming in 2026, if Carlos Sainz is going to Williams, which is the...
It sounds so weird to say that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it shocked me a couple of weeks ago, but it seems like it's heading that way. Then if they don't sign Ocon, Audi, Sauber, heading into next year, then there's no other great options. And this is a manufacturer that's coming into Formula 1 with a huge amount of expectation. This is Audi. This is one of the biggest manufacturers in the automobile industry, coming into Formula 1 with a load of fanfare. Nico Hülkenberg is a very solid peddler. I think Esteban Ocon is a really decent driver. I think they have two very solid upper midfield drivers. If they miss out on Ocon, where else do you start looking?
I guess you look at Bottas staying for a similar kind of profile of someone who's won races, got experience. But I think in a sense, and I feel it's odd that Bottas might be scrapping right now to try and find a seat for 25, 26 before the music stops. But I also see that the team probably want to reset and want to take control of their own destiny and be like, we're not just inheriting what was already at Sauber, we are our own kind of project going forward. So there's that, or there's Yuki Tsunoda, if he does want out from the Red Bull sort of project.
Well, this brings me on to, because we could talk about driver market shenanigans for the whole pod, because there is so much and so much kind of conjecture going on at the moment. But Yuki Tsunoda surely must feel overlooked because Sergio Perez is signed for that second seat at Red Bull. He's been doing so well this year. Is that unfortunate? Has he been slightly stifled, do you think? And perhaps, what does that also mean for Daniel Ricciardo?
It was interesting because I think there was a spell maybe the start of last year where I got the impression from Yuki that he was very frustrated that he wasn't being looked at seriously by Red Bull, and that involved there wasn't a seat fitting, I understand, for him at Red Bull when there was for Nick de Vries, in case of you need to promote one of the other drivers from your junior team, as it was then, on the occasion that you got someone out last minute. And he felt that, I was like, well, why not? I've been here longer, I can do this. Now, I think maybe at the time, maybe they thought with De Vries' experience with different cars and stuff and the consistency they expected from him, that actually made more sense. But since then, Yuki actually seems to have generally, Bahrain aside, where he had a bit, he lost control of his emotions in that race at the end of it, he's calmed down, he's been very consistent recently, and I think he's now seeing his value up and down this paddock increase, not just within Red Bull. So I actually think he's taken it a bit better because either, he said it himself today, he's in a stronger negotiating position with Red Bull for his next deal or for what they might want from him, or he knows his value if he wants to go somewhere else.
It's been really impressive. He's been, for the last couple of years, sort of clinging on to that AlphaTauri RB seat. And now this year, he's actually looking like, we mentioned him already, in potential Audi. He's going to head to a manufacturer. Or he's one of the best prospects around as Sainz is looking to sign his deal elsewhere. And plenty of other dominoes are not falling, or falling in Perez retaining his drive, for example, you're looking around, you think Tsunoda could be a decent prospect for, I don't know, Alpine, Haas, or just retaining his drive.
Yeah, interesting times, isn't it? You don't want to blink, you might miss an announcement.
You said Daniel Ricciardo as well, though.
Yeah,
both RB drivers today were saying happy to stay here. Generally, like Yuki was kind of pushed to it, but Daniel definitely was like happy to stay here. This doesn't mean there won't be a chance in the future. Yuki also said that about Checo. He said he's still got to perform, which hints at the 1+1 thing. So I think they think if they're in that seat at RB still, one, that's a car that's getting more competitive. It's more fun for them to drive if they're fighting for points. But two, if something does go wrong at Red Bull, like you're almost automatically going to be one of the two drivers they're going to pick to put in there if it's at short notice. So you're still in a good spot in that sense. And I think that's why neither of them, I don't think it was massively unexpected that Checo was staying, and neither of them are certain that there's a better option elsewhere for them.
Right. I'm going to draw a line under the driver market, and we're going to have a very brief chat about the F1 regulations that were announced today for 2026, because it's been a bit of a sort of long process working out what they're actually going to look like. Finally, we've got some clarification today. First thoughts, Chris, your impressions?
Very complex.
So let's keep it brief.
Yeah, so the fact that you're going to have two different configurations of basically downforce, where you've got the car in a high downforce setting for corners, and then it will switch to a low downforce setting to reduce drag for the straights.
This is the X and the Z, even though I keep on saying X and Y, so I need to get a handle on that.
X mode and Z mode, which are really catchy terms for both of those, and I'm glad that we've got those terms that really will engage the fan base.
Or maybe they could have a fan competition, name the modes.
Speed mode and corner mode or something could be pretty simple, wouldn't it? Like, I mean,
That's
maybe
not very Formula One, though,
no,
is
it's
it?
not.
You haven't won the competition, Chris.
No, I don't.
Do enter again.
But from that point of view, that's basically a byproduct of the new engine rules, which came first, and they really locked in to get more manufacturers in, understandably, but then they've had to unravel the challenges that makes. And one was the energy deployment. If you've got high drag basically from the car in a straight line, you're going to run out of power. So, and you're going to have a drop off in speed, so they needed to address that. It actually could go quite well. I think Max Verstappen did say it's been a big improvement from last year to this with the simulations and the work they've done. And there's another 18 months of maturity of working on those. So he said, who knows, I might get in those cars in 26. I think this is great fun. Right now, he wasn't fully convinced.
Lewis Hamilton also not wholly convinced. He said it could be even lighter. They're going to be 30 kilos lighter all in. He also said that he'd heard from some of the drivers he'd been talking to up and down the grid who'd driven it on the sim that it felt slower. So they're going to have to do some work to convince the likes of Sir Lewis Hamilton. What about the likes of Jolyon Palmer? A lighter car, is that the direction you want to see Formula One go in, even more than 30 kilos?
Yeah, well, I like to see a lighter car and a smaller car, and it is both of those, but not by the amount that we would like to see from the glory days of old and the pre-hybrid era, where the cars were really darty. They were a little bit more alive than they are now. They're so quick now. The downforce is going to be reduced. I'd expect them to be a little bit slower. If the racing's fun, then I think we'll forgive it all. That's what we're all here to see: competition and good racing action. The jury's going to be out on that until we start 26. It's going to be quite a different formula, though, I think. Even if the cars are going to look similar size and not look grossly different, I think the complexities of driving it, the handling of these two different aero levels is going to be quite interesting. So there's going to be a lot for everyone to get their heads around.
Yeah, we've got a couple of years. Well, year and actually not that long, really. Now, if you think about it,
Look,
I really need to get
dropping there for us.
Well, I just need to get my head around the X and the Z modes. So I'll go off and do a bit of homework on that. Right. Okay. So tech regs, complicated. I'm sure we'll talk about them more in the however many months remaining before we see them roll out in 2026. Let's talk about this weekend, Canada. It is still raining, I think. Keep on saying drips. Yes, it is. I wish you could see us. In fact, I don't. We're sitting on these rather random cushions. With that wonderful image in your mind, pink and yellow cushions, we're going to take a short break, and then we will discuss who is looking good as we come into the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. It is still a little dark, a little gloomy here in Montreal. We are sheltering in actually the media pen area, because that is the only place we could take cover to record the podcast. I'm joined by Chris Medland and Jolyon Palmer. So guys, let's look ahead to this weekend. We come off the back of Monaco, Charles Leclerc winning in a Ferrari, his home race. That's given him a load of enthusiasm, and I think the team a lot of enthusiasm coming into this particular race. But Can we expect them to go well here? Will it be Charles Leclerc versus Max Verstappen? Should we be writing other characters into the plotline this weekend?
Well, we can write McLaren straight in. They're going to be there or thereabouts again. On paper, this track looks like it would be a Ferrari strong track, a little bit like Monaco was. There's a long straight, but apart from that, it's kind of Monaco-esque. A lot of low speed where they were very good last time out. Usually it would be a bit bumpier, but it's been resurfaced for this year, so that might help Red Bull slightly. And McLaren are quite good across all tracks right now. Low speed in Monaco, high speed in Imola. So it's anyone's game. I
love that, to say that in 2024. It's anyone's game.
Yeah, we didn't think so, but it's amazing the last few races how this development war has just turned the season on its head, and everyone's turning up now. Excited to see who's going to win the race. It sounds ridiculous for Formula One, but for a year and 3 months, we know who's going to win the race and who's going to come second is the race. And that's not what Formula One's all about. Even if Red Bull racking up the records and Verstappen racking up the records is impressive, we've got a championship on our hands as it stands right now. Verstappen's still a major favourite for the drivers. The constructors is more open. I think Ferrari will hope it doesn't rain this weekend, because that's where Max is so good. And I think Ferrari in dry conditions might start as favourite again.
Well, let's hear why Max Verstappen is feeling a little frustrated at the moment. This track, Julian's spoken about the sort of bounciness, the bumpiness of this track and the curbs. That's one of the weaknesses for the Red Bull at the moment. So let's hear from Max Verstappen ahead of this weekend first.
Naturally, of course, we have our development, planned, like what we already had. But I think this is a good opportunity to find, performance that maybe we didn't think about in the first place. So, yeah, it's in a way exciting, because I do feel like there is quite a lot of lap time to be unlocked from that. And I feel like, finally we are putting a lot more effort into that, which is good.
The limitations you've been talking about, you've been driving with those all along. How long have they been inhibiting your progress? Is it only because the convergence on the grid is meaning you're having to drive the car differently? No, it's just been there from the start of this era of cars. It's just that maybe before we had a bit more of an advantage in the corners, where then we could live with it in some places, but Singapore has never been a strong place for us, and actually when people catch up, that makes it even more difficult. And Monaco, I think we lucked in maybe a little bit as well. 2022 with a crazy race, with a strategy, the team did a great job to push us onto the podium and the win for Checo. And then last year, I think at that point of the season, our car was very, very strong. We were winning the races by quite a margin, and then Monaco was very tight. So that already, is a bit of an indication that we're not doing something is not going well at certain tracks. And now, of course, with everyone closing up, you cannot rely on the little pace advantage that you have. And all those little things at the time, did you talk to the team about perhaps trying to get on top of them back then? And they obviously haven't.
But of course, when you're still winning, probably, it's less serious. But now, of course, every detail matters. So you look into every single detail.
And just one final one from me. Checo's future is sealed. Do you feel that the team may have signed him to entice you to stay? Because, of course, there are question marks about your future with the team.
No, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I mean, people always make up stories, but things are not linked to each other. And I'm happy where I am at the moment. I have a contract till 28, and the dream and the target is still to end it after 28, to really run out the whole contract. And anyway, after that, I don't even know if I want to continue in the first place. So I don't think about it too much. I'm just very happy that Checo sign is also better for him. Knowing what you're doing in the coming years, and we've always worked really well together. We have a good stability in the team like that. It's always been nice and calm like that, and I think that's also very important within a team.
So that's how Verstappen's feeling. He's got a 31-point lead in the drivers' standings at the moment, ahead of Charles Leclerc. And then in the Constructors' Championship, it's Red Bull leading by 24 points now only, ahead of Ferrari. So Ferrari are the big contenders then. Should we be looking to both drivers though? Because we've all got quite hyped up about the Monegasque winning in Monaco, but Carlos Sainz has been having an impressive season as well. So is he going to be right up there as well, Chris?
Yeah, he really has. Jolyon mentioned it earlier in the pod actually, that if you've got to remember Jeddah, and he wasn't there and scoring points. And then he's still well placed and would be much better off if he'd been able to race in Jeddah too. So I think we've got to really appreciate that, the strength of that lineup and the way the two of them are performing. And generally, I think China, they kind of had a bit of a run in, but they generally don't create too many headaches in terms of risking points, the way they fight each other. So I think that's been one of the most impressive aspects of Ferrari this season. And when you just said about the points gap, there is a genuine possibility. I mean, it does take a little bit of creative license, but genuine possibility that we leave here and Ferrari are leading the Constructors' Championship.
Imagine Fred Vasseur, the team principal, smile at that point.
But imagine saying that 2 races into the season or 3 races into the season. And the fact that then, dare I say it, right now, rain permitting, I think I'd say Charles Leclerc is a favourite for this race, but everything is very tight, very tight. This isn't like I'll definitely go and put your money on him. But I think if I had to pick one, I'm going with Leclerc to win it. Well, that would naturally bring him within a race victory of Max Verstappen. Again, 9 rounds into the season, heading back to Europe. Who would have thought we'd have been saying something like that? So it is just so exciting, as Jolien was saying, that we have options, but also that it hasn't run away already. You know, Max isn't so far up the road that it can't get close for a few races. And who knows then, a DNF here, something like that. And this season could get really, really spicy.
Well, Charles Leclerc is buoyed up after his win on home soil just a week or so ago. Let's hear how he's feeling ahead of this weekend. And I asked him about the opportunities for the rest of the season and also this weekend.
I do believe this weekend is one of them. I don't think that their strength is curb riding, which here there are quite a lot of curb riding, so it might be an opportunity. I think from Barcelona onwards we might see a Red Bull that was a bit more similar to the type of performance they had at the beginning of the season. But for now we've got to focus race after race, and starting from this weekend. And this weekend could be an opportunity, as well as the weather is not the best, so we've got to see how the car will react in those conditions and make the most out of it.
Ferrari's Marc Genet said that the car is now doing what you want. How helpful is that for your mindset now coming into race weekends, and how different is that to what you felt before?
It feels good. It's not a big difference, because in Formula 1 we only speak about very little differences, but every little differences in the right direction makes a positive change, and for me it was a good one. So I've just got to keep doing what I do, trying to optimize absolutely everything, just like everybody in the team. Focus on ourselves, on the process to get the best result possible, and hopefully at the end of the weekend we'll have the same result as the last weekend.
So you've heard from 2 of the main protagonists this weekend, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. But Jolien, you mentioned McLaren, and I agree with you, and I think people probably hyping up Lando Norris's chances, but I'm going to put Oscar Piastri right in there as well, because he has been very, very threatening as well. Front row qualifying in Imola, of course, didn't start there, and podium as well last time out in Monaco. It's really going well for him, and he's quite a sort of calm little killer, isn't he? Gets the job done when no one's really looking.
Yeah, that's actually quite a good way of describing it, really. Really nice guy.
I don't mean
very,
that literally,
very
just to
calm.
put that out there.
But he shows he's got what it takes. He's been ruthless in contract negotiations in the past. He's been ruthless on the track at times as well. And I think the McLaren lineup is really potent. The 2 of those drivers, Norris has got his win. Piastri will get it, I think, this year with the way that the team are going. I think it's exciting for them, and they could be a major threat later on in the season as well in terms of the constructors making up for a bit of lost ground in the early races. I think I'd still probably put Norris as your favourite for those 2 on this circuit. Especially, I think Lando is one of the best drivers in the pack when it rains, and around this sort of circuit, I think in the wet, Norris will be licking his lips at a chance to do something special. But yeah, Oscar's right there, and they're pushing each other to find the last hundredths of a second. Those 2 are really, really a strong pairing.
Well, look, I think we are set for an exciting weekend, and I have to say I didn't think I'd be saying that very much in 2024, as much as I try and stay optimistic, don't I, Jolien?
Always.
Yeah. Anyone up for poutine this weekend? Have you tried it already?
Already had some.
Oh.
First night here, straight some poutine.
What
Gravy.
sort of poutine? Because you can get all sorts of toppings.
It had beef stew on top. Oh. It was good. It was really good. It was a good, solid, stodgy way to start the weekend.
Are you track running tonight?
I am track running tonight, even in the rain. But yeah, that's fine. I'd actually
Not
run
that you need
yesterday
to. That sounds
morning.
awful. That's a terrible segment.
No, I did. I ran yesterday morning, and then I was like, well, because I've run, I can have this
Beef
poutine.
stew poutine.
Exactly. But then you do look at the calorie count that's on it next to the menu, and you're like, I'm going to have to run tomorrow as well.
Never do that.
Calorie counts haven't done poutine much favours, have they?
No.
No, not good at all. Will you be trying it this weekend?
Of
Joe?
course. It's when in Montreal.
Absolutely. Or Montreal.
Montreal, sorry. We're dropping away from La Française.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, thank you very much for helping me preview the Canadian Grand Prix. Chris Medland and Jolyon Palmer. We're going to have live coverage of every session across the BBC this weekend, and the Grand Prix is live on BBC Radio 5 Live as well. You've been listening to an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.